Welcome back to this Moneycontrol live stream. You're watching Closing Bell with me, Nandita Khemka, and my colleague.
Hello there, I'm Yatin Mota.
Well, Yatin, the texture of the market is completely opposite to what we saw yesterday. Yesterday, we were full on risk-on mode.
Correct.
But today, completely different, stark contrast. We saw the global markets, in fact, come under pressure. US equities were under pressure. In fact, as we speak, US futures are down in excess of 0.5%. European markets saw deep cuts because, of course, the Israel-Iran conflict has entered fifth day. Both the nations continue to trade missiles and, continue to, trade missiles, as I said. But in terms of our market, let me quickly take you through the action. The Nifty failed to hold on to the 24,900 mark, but the support level of 24,800 is still there. We managed to defend that. So that's something we'll take heart from. Also the fact that the India VIX index cooled off slightly. Even though we saw weakness in the market, the India VIX was down 3%. Midcap index took a sharper knock, but that was also somewhere around 0.5% or thereabouts. Breadth was negative. Advanced decline ratio was at 1:2. Pharma index, I want to point that index out because that index saw a 2% cut, especially after Trump's comments on pharma tariffs. He said pharma tariffs may be coming very soon, which is when we saw a knee-jerk reaction. They were already under pressure, but stocks slipped to their day's low with Dr. Reddy's tumbling almost 3.5%. But we did end of session lows as well for the pharma index. It was 1.5% to 1.8% down towards the end of the session. IT continues to see buying interest. I think in the last 10 sessions, we've seen the IT pack gaining for 9 sessions, Yatin. So that's the persistent buying interest, in IT stocks. In terms of individual movers then, very quickly, Adani Enterprises, that was the top Nifty laggard, followed by Dr. Reddy's, Sun Pharma, Eternal, ONGC, Tata Motors, Shriram Finance. These stocks were some of the other laggards. Tech names continue to do well, as I mentioned. Tech Mahindra, Infosys, TCS, these were some of the names that held out, even HCL Tech for that matter. Some consumption names like Asian Paints did well, Maruti as well among gainers today, and Hero MotoCorp, HUL, Wipro, these were some of the other movers. Yatin, from the broad end of the markets, quite a few high flyers, and we had some block deals as well.
Block deals as well. Vishal Megamart, 10,000 crores was a block deal there, wherein Kedara Capital, which is the promoter entity, they sold nearly 10,000 crores worth of stock, 22% equity. But, the good part is that when the trade happened close to 113, 114, the stock closed 10% higher. So that was good demand on the institutional side. So that remained the top traded counter. Shipping Corporation of India, after a strong move in the past few trading sessions, was down 10%. Hindustan Zinc 5% down. However, on the gaining side, we have IKS 7% higher. Power India as well as Happiest Minds were the other mid-cap gainers. Nandita, overall, as you were mentioning, the advanced decline was weak. Overall, the market was weakish in trade after expectations that US will also intervene in the Iran-Israel conflict on the side of Israel, obviously.
That's true, Yatin. That's the key question that we want to ask our, group consulting editor of Network 18, Bodhisattva Ganguly, also joining in this afternoon. It's a fifth day of conflict. Last evening, of course, there were signals from Iran that it was seeking ceasefire from Israel, with the help of mediation from, Gulf nations, but that didn't really come by. In fact, the latest commentary from Trump, that's something that the market seemed to be digesting. He said, first of all, he called for, evacuation from Tehran. He's also made an early exit from G7 summit in Canada. In fact, he's also quashed any, speculations that he may be working, towards a ceasefire between the two nations. So now, what are the chances that US is also looking at getting involved in this conflict? And if that happens, how do you think the markets will react? Bodhi.
So Nandita, just to go back a day, there were these reports that Iran had reached out through the UAE, Qatar, and so on, asking for a ceasefire and a way out, subject to negotiations over the nuclear program. Now, President Trump's statements today, where he explicitly denies, or he appears to explicitly deny, in the case of President Trump, it's always hard to make out for sure. But he said that he's working on something bigger than a ceasefire. He also, in fact, took as we widely reported, took a swipe at President Macron of France, saying that he has no idea why I'm going to Washington, but it's something bigger than a ceasefire. And that is being interpreted by some quarters, meaning that the US may indeed join the conflict, obviously on the side of Israel. Now, the way it can do so, so there is obviously a lobby in the US, or a section of the what has been referred to as the neocons, or a part of the Republican Party, or senators like Lindsey Graham, who are close to Trump, who have been urging the US to join. And the way it is being that the US could join is that, Iran's the biggest of Iran's nuclear facilities are below this mountain. This, I hope I'm getting the pronunciation right. It's Fudro. This thing Iran has, and you would need a certain type of bomb, which are referred to as bunker busters, which only the US has. So either the US could carry out an attack, it is being speculated, or supply the bombs, and you also need Israel also doesn't have the necessary aircraft which can deliver these kind of bombs. So yes, it is speculated that US might join the attack to put an end to the Iranian nuclear program once and for all. Whether it'll do that remains to be seen. If you look at the political configuration of the US, while there is support for the US doing that, there is also opposition, including parts of the MAGA right. If you look at figures like, Tucker Carlson, who's a journalist now turned podcaster and a major cultural influence in America, Steve Bannon, parts of the MAGA right certainly are opposed to this. But there is a strong possibility that the US could. I mean, some statements seem to hint at that. Now the question is, what will happen if they do? What is the impact on crude oil prices and so on and so forth? Well, if you look at the war so far, I think to be very honest, I think if I'm, I think the crude oil was $66 to a barrel. It rose to close to 80. I think 78 was the peak, but it's now close to 70. So it's kind of fallen. Also, it could be, of course, this is a bigger level of escalation, but there could be certainly some impact on crude oil prices. But and I don't know whether you're going to ask me a question on that, but let's see if Iran cut. I mean, Iran is now accounts for 3 to 4% of world oil production, but because of sanctions, it is actually not a major supply. It's not. India doesn't buy any crude from Iran, for instance, because of the US sanctions. Right. So you have to keep these things in mind. But prices could go up by some. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So Bodhi sir, I just wanted to ask you on this particular aspect. Iran doesn't have that kind of a capacity utilization because of the sanctions. Obviously, their oil reserves are quite larger, their gas reserves are quite larger, and they have buyers like China. When it comes to the sanctions, despite that China has been buying low cost energy from them. In the geopolitical arena, if US joins hypothetically, which is quite clear with the Trump tweet in his social media handle that they offered peace terms to Iran, they are not agreeing to a deal, and probably now they will have to face the consequences. And the last line that he wrote is "Make America Great Again." So assuming US is joining Israel with its heavy bombers, do you think there is a chance that there could be intervention from Russia, China, who have been historic allies with Iran? On the geopolitical front, obviously we haven't seen a spark in crude oil prices. There was some knee-jerk panic in global markets, but I think it's quite a limited kind of a scenario. It was not as bad as what happened during the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So what's your assessment? Do you think this can blow out to a regional war? Can Iran damage other allies in terms of their military assets which are in other Gulf countries? A lot of scenarios can play out. What do you think now Iran can do potentially after Israel has almost neutralized their entire air defense and air craft capacities?
So Yatin, I think to quote from the famous confrontation of the Oval Office between Trump and Zelensky, I don't think Iran has too many cards left, to be very honest. I mean, they clearly, as President Trump himself said, it's pretty apparent that they're certainly not winning. Their ballistic missiles have inflicted some damage on Israel. But the point is, the damage that Israel has inflicted on Iran is of a much higher order of magnitude in terms of just look at the number of senior generals and of both the Iranian army and the Revolutionary Guard who've been killed. they have damaged the nuclear reactor Natanz, which is the one of the big reactors. They have damaged, so they have done considerable damage. They have also seemed to have crippled Iran's air defense systems. So it doesn't really have, and if it cut off the Strait of Hormuz, let's say, the problem is that Iran, I mean, Iran also relies on revenues, right? It would cripple itself. But to come to your question on whether China and Russia intervenes on Iran's side, I'm not very sure of that. I don't think so. I mean, they could. Iran's air defenses were seriously damaged in a series of raids which Israel carried on October last year. So it's a good question why the air defense has not been replenished by now. They were largely using Russian air defenses. It's almost it's many months since the raid. Possibly because Russia itself, because it is preoccupied by its war with Ukraine. That could be one of the reasons. But I don't see the Chinese or the Russians really intervening militarily. They could give some supplies like fighter aircraft or air defenses to Iran. But it is, but again, there's been absolutely in the 5 days that the war has been on, there's been no sign of that. So it seems that they will defend Iran in the UN Security Council in international fora. But I don't, so far, it does not appear that they have moved in a major way to supply Iran with weaponry. In the case of even in the case of the assaults on Israel. In fact, even if the US does not actively join the war, the US, of course, is helping Israel to defend the ballistic missile. But Israel itself seems likely to continue for several more days to disable and degrade Iran's nuclear capacities, its ballistic missiles. A lot of the airstrikes have been on the missile launchers and quite frankly, they've been from a military point of view, Israel has been very impressive in the way that they have been able to bring the Iranian regime almost to its knees. The question is, what is the end game here? What does Israel want? What does the US? Are they looking at regime change in Iran? Are they looking to inflict such a humiliation? It's been already a concern, so that the Iranian regime falls. If that happens, what will happen after that? These are the uncertainties. Because obviously you have this, the Islamic regime in Iran since 1979. So what will happen? But Israel seems to be going by the Hezbollah playbook, really, where it kind of systematically killed all the leaders of Hezbollah. Quite frankly, their intelligence capabilities are remarkable. They've obviously thoroughly created Iranian society. If you look at some of the drone attacks which were carried out, they were carried out by ground operators. So this is quite remarkable. So yeah, but to come back to your question, there doesn't seem to be, as of now, the danger with these kind of things is that you could be proven wrong in 24 hours in a fast-moving scenario like that. But I don't see, certainly not Russia. Russia has a lot on its hands, but I don't see Russia and China intervening in a very major way to back Iran militarily. They might provide diplomatic air cover to Iran, but not very much military. Don't hold me to it.
Got it. Of course not. Thank you, Bodhi. On that note, I'm afraid we are running out of time. I'd like to thank you for sharing your perspective with us. Always a pleasure, and we look forward to more discussions as and when the situation really, evolves. Thank you. Yatin, on that note, of course, how this pans out will depend on whether US really intervenes or not, gets involved, so to say. But another important thing domestically is the SEBI circular on expiry day, right? Yes. That has come out. And NSE has the edge?
So NSE has the edge, and probably tomorrow BSE stock might sulk.
Yes.
Because the decision what is coming out, and TV18 is quoting its sources saying that NSE has got the communication from SEBI regarding the expiry day, which will be there for NSE will be Tuesday, and for BSE would be Thursday. Now, right now, BSE does their weekly expiry on Tuesday. And NSE is on Thursday. What this means is that BSE is likely to lose 20% of their option volumes in the best case, according to analyst estimates. Obviously, on the overall basis, it might impact their earnings by 7 to 8%, according to a Goldman Sachs report which got published yesterday. So expect that the stock could be under pressure because it's almost at record levels.
Yeah.
Just corrected some
Corrected
7-8%,
10, 11%,
and another
yeah.
7-8% decline in tomorrow's trade could be quite likely. So BSE, that would be the stock to focus on. And now do remember, it's just a minute of time wherein there could be an official circular from SEBI. But yes, NSE gets Tuesday and BSE gets Thursday when it comes to the weekly option expiry.
Also, of course, expect some bit of pressure on the shares of BSE. Their stocks had been under a bout of profit taking over the last 5-6 sessions, shed somewhere around 11%. But that would be the stock to watch out for today. On that note, we are completely out of time on this edition of Closing Bell. Thank you for watching, and of course, have a great evening. And come back and join us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Lots happening on the geopolitical front. Let's see how the situation really evolves, because till tomorrow morning, there is a full night left, and once Trump reaches, you'll have to see how US really takes this forward. But goodbye from me and Yatin. Stay tuned to Money Control for all your other news and updates. Thank you.